Hello, welcome to Dissident Canada. My name is Tyler. Today I will be talking about the first wave, or the first announcement of the nation building products that Carney has announced. And I will also be talking about why there's no pipeline and why I still think there will be a pipeline, but I am once again well ahead of the curve and terrible at predicting the timeline. But I'll get into that after the first five projects. The first five projects aren't all that bad. Like if you're going to start doing some nation building in Canada, they're not that bad. Uh, I would add on them a revamp of the Trans Canada Highway and add some rail, but that's just because I'm ambitious as all hell. But like of the announced projects, like you've got phase two of LNG Canada in Kitimat, BC, doubling its production of liquefied natural gas. Nothing wrong there. It's a good idea. I don't really think the Canadian government should have really any investment in that, but at this point in time, I understand that if you're going to walk back all the liberal policies of the last decade, you kind of have to have government secured investment in it to make it so that eventually, at some point in the future, companies will be like, "Oh, we can relatively trust this Canadian nation. We can actually invest in growth." Um, a nuclear project in Clarington, Ontario, which will make small modular nuclear reactors. That's good. I mean, like objectively, that's a good idea. Um, terminal container project expanding at the port of Montreal. Again, not that bad of an idea. Expansions and then of a mining project in Saskatchewan and in northwestern BC. What's really interesting is to see the doubling down in BC of having two projects there. Now, that may be because Carney's got leverage there, or because Carney sees that with what's coming potentially with Alberta, you can stop, BC from following along if you give them a bone. I mean, you could do that, or it's to secure a base of support in BC, in parts of BC. Who knows? It may be these are the lowest tier shit that you could get done really fast, really easy, or relatively um, easy. Um, Carney's team is claiming that these will generate more than $60 billion for the Canadian economy and create tens of thousands of high-paying careers for our workers. I call bullshit on that. But like these are the projects you're not typically looking for. Like the Liberals putting forward nuclear power, a liquefied natural gas, and two mining projects. Like that's insane. That's not what they've done for the last 10 years. And it's, part of the reason why I reaffirm there will be a freaking oil pipeline, if not a gas pipeline as well. All right? There is a massive turnaround and it is going to be slow but steady. Again, I was probably too ambitious with my timeline because you're going to have to walk back the crazies, which is extremely hard, especially after what happened last week. They are insanely crazy. Um, so like the ones they're talking about next, or they require further improvement. All right. Wind West Atlantic Energy. Wind power is just so dumb. You can see it's not a functional form of power generation, and it all comes down to physics. All right? When you break it down to the simplest thing, you have a stick, right? Sticking up out of the ground with a massive mass that is spinning on that stick. All right? You have to govern the rate at which that thing spins, because if it spins too fast, well, your stick's gonna break and it don't work. So inherently, it's an inefficient way of generating power that is, on top of being inefficient, unreliable as hell. So, and then you've got more stupidity. You've got a carbon capture pipeline project, which, hey, we're going to take carbon and capture it and then put it back underground. I think this is dumb for multiple reasons. One, carbon, extremely important periodic element, especially because we're carbon based life forms. Everything on Earth needs carbon that lives. Secondly, it is of my opinion that carbon has a natural life cycle, very much like you're taught in science classes, at least in Canada. At least we used to teach it, of the water cycle, and then eventually you get into like high school and they teach you about the nitrogen cycle. I think there is a carbon cycle, and I believe part of that carbon cycle has to do with hydrocarbons. Um, it's very very important, I think. But anyways, carbon, extremely important. Capturing it and burying it underground, stupid as all hell. Stupid as all hell. All right. Upgrades to the port of Churchill. That's great. That's a great idea. Expand ports. Make shipping easier. Importing and exporting easier. All-weather road infrastructure in northern Canada. That, I think, is a very indicative thing. That is either A, giving a small boot to the territories and, let's say, northern Ontario, northern Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. We'll throw Quebec in there, as northern Quebec in there as well, and BC. That could indicate more mining projects on the way and more projects that require road infrastructure at the very least, if not rail infrastructure in northern Canada. So you could see an increase in mining projects again in the territories and all those northern parts of Canada, which fantastic. I think this is a push made because of Trump, and I will get into that later. It has to deal with why I think there's an oil pipeline coming. And then here's another stupid thing: the Alto high-speed rail corridor between Toronto and Quebec City. This is probably the dumbest one. There is probably, just thinking off the top of my head, there is not enough people that need to go between anywhere between Toronto and Quebec City on this supposed high-speed rail corridor to justify its fucking existence. This will be just as dumb as in my area we have what I think they call the light what do they call it? That's the LRT, light rail transit system. It's a glorified fucking trolley that has caused no end in traffic jams and other problems. And I believe we're possibly still waiting on fucking Bombardier to deliver a goddamn train because Bombardier can't get their heads out of their ass. What a useless fucking company. Anyways, the small scale LRT thing has not paid back its initial investment of I think it ended up being $2.5 billion when they said, it'll be just below $1 billion. Then it quickly became $1 billion. Then more, and then more. And it just, I lost count at a certain point. It just so angry. Anyways, I think you'll have a similar situation with that. I think it's just a stupid fucking idea. Now, the one I skipped is an Arctic economic and security corridor. Why I think that reveals the hand and shows, this is why Carney's projects are very, you would consider mostly left, or sorry, not left, mostly right-leaning in design. You've got mining projects, liquefied natural gas, small nuclear reactor, expansion of ports. The only two left-leaning ones are Well, three, I guess. You've got the high-speed rail, which is just fucking useless. Uh, the even more useless wind power bullshit, and then the stupidity of carbon capture. All right, like there's three, six, 11 projects I talked about quickly, and only three of them are left leaning in nature by their general topic. All right, and one has been, again, the Arctic Economic and Security Corridor. Trump is talking about this. All right, like Trump has been talking about critical minerals and having a critical mineral strategy in the upcoming negotiations for what is it, USCUMA, whatever the trade negotiations that are coming up. Likely, we've had leaks about this before, about Trump wanting guaranteed mineral rights in Canada, or was it Carney offering them up? Something like that. All these projects scream of, oh, we're going to do this to get a deal with Trump. All right? Especially the Arctic. Okay? And then with the recent, what is it? Brookfield, Carney's, his company, I suppose you could say it. He's like, he was CEO or whatever. I don't know if he outright owns it, but he's very connected to Brookfield Asset Management. And they recently acquired the largest U.S. pipeline company. Like, they not only bought the company, but also outright bought its debt as well. Okay? And people are like, see, Carney bought a pipeline company that's not Canadian. They didn't announce an oil pipeline in Canada, so Carney's, out to screw Canadians and make a buck. Absolutely, that is true, but you guys are not thinking correctly. You're not looking at these projects announced and, the ones that need further approval, which, whether or not these get done, I think these are just mostly going to be tokens for the United States. I'll be completely fair. Sure, they'll send out some of the checks, but really, this is just a way of buying time until the next president, when we can go back to the same old business. In all likelihood, I will give that cynical take every day. But there's no way the Canadian federal government can convince a Canadian pipeline company at this freaking time to say, hey, we're going to allow you to build a pipeline and actually move product through it. The Liberals canceled, two pipeline projects? One that was fucking done, basically. And now they'd have to rebuild it because it hasn't been in use, so it's rusted to shit, to say the very least. But you know who you can get? You can buy a company using your company, make a deal with President Trump, and they'll be the pipeline company. Especially after it leaked last week that, before this announcement of these projects, there's not going to be an oil pipeline company because no Canadian companies would sign on. It's like, yeah, no duh. I thought the idea would be that, Carney and his Liberal cohorts would, secretly in the back end buy up enough shares to twist the arm of a Canadian company. But this makes a hell of a lot more sense. You buy the American company, and now it's a Canadian company, and you can just pressure. You don't even have to pressure them. You just say, fucking build it, and they build it. And yes, I still think an oil pipeline and natural gas pipeline is extremely reasonable for multiple other reasons. The one big one being they need to pacify Alberta and Albertans just enough. They are fairly worried about separation. Don't kid me how much they play it down, and how much, again, I made the video last week, how I can't take some of the Alberta separatists seriously because they are not thinking of how to actually freaking separate. They're just thinking, hey, we can vote on this and then it'll be fine. What world do you live in? The United States of America in 2020 had multiple regime change projects done on its citizens to prevent Donald Trump from being reelected. Do you not think the Canadian government is capable of the same shit? There was also, in 2021, some dirty shit that went on in our election. And in the most recent election, there was some dirty shit that went on. It wasn't the reason why the Liberals won. Like, the Liberals were still going to get a minority government. And somehow Carney's made it out that he has a mandate from the people, which, brilliant from the scriptwriters to just steal right from Trump. Mandate is a mandate. Like, he doesn't, but it's hilarious to objectively see it. But it's a brilliant piece of propaganda for your base, which is all that really matters. Especially when you're going to have to do some dumb shit that they or some not dumb shit. You'll have to do stuff they think is dumb, even though it's incredibly important. Like, if you look at the position of the Canadian economy and what's going on in the euro dollar, all right, the only way Canada has a chance going forward is to do some of these projects, expand critical minerals, expand oil and gas. It's the only way you're going to get investment and hold on for the most part. Like, the government will still be able to operate because of the way bonds work with the financial system. They may end up at some point, as I have said before, having a sovereign debt crisis, which I still think that's extremely possible, but it's not like the bond sales are going to fail for Canada. That's just the refi price. Basically, the way it's going to work is they're using bonds to pay off bonds. So it's very similar to refining your house or anything else. So the refi is going to be, at a higher and higher and higher interest rate that they'll have to pay. And they'll continue to do it because the way bonds work in the system and how important they are, especially if bond prices spike, like the big, 5 banks in Canada will gobble them up and they'll just stop investing in the real economy because all they do is arbitrage. They it's not really arbitrage, it's a spread. If you have to pay, say, 1% fees for creation of money, right, for debt, but you can buy something, a 1-month bond note for, say, 2%, you're just pocketing a 1% spread. It is the easiest money you can do. Like, at 3%, you're pocketing 2%. That's amazing. If we start to see bond yields spike, like, that becomes even more attractive because, again, like, you're paying, say, 1 or 2% for money creation for debt, and then you can get 5, 8, 10%, or nominal bond yield, and then when you do the spread, you're like at 3, 8%. Like, you're just minting money for just doing nothing. Banks are some of the most cowardly people, and it's, even with their rehypothecation strategies, it is extremely cowardly. They are very risk averse. It's why government debt is a plague that will be with us for a long while. Anyways, like, you can see the hints of something of Carney capitulating to Trump. He's been doing it slowly and slowly and slowly throughout his tenure so far. And I would suspect, again, as the Alberta referendum, the vote on the referendum comes up, and as we start to really negotiate the new trade deal with the renegotiate the previous trade deal with the United States, I would suspect you'll see more and more of these projects be announced, and and eventually you'll hear projects that require support from the United States to get done, such as the Arctic Economic Security Corridor. I guarantee when that is finalized, that has a lot to do with Trump. All right. I will again add the disclaimer. There is a high likelihood none of this shit ever gets to shovel and dirt. This could all be smoke and mirrors to run out the clock on President Trump. It all depends basically on Trump. If Trump is extremely harsh and targeted at Canada and Mexico, okay? If he's able to dedicate the time to that instead of, bailing out Bibi Netanyahu and starting other shit around the world that he should not be fucking involved in, you could see actual shovels and dirt. I think some of them have to happen. And if the ones that have to happen will have, corruption written all over them. Again, that oil pipeline company purchased by Brookfield Asset just screams of, oh, that's the pipeline company where they'll build the pipeline with, and Carney will make $1 billion to himself on that grift. Yeah. So, do I think this saves Canada from the coming repeat of, well, we're already repeating, but the formal acknowledgement of repeating 2008 and the next decade? No, this won't prevent it. This won't stop it. This won't slow it down whatsoever. Like, you're gonna have extremely hard time convincing, just even if, like, you get rid of the liberals in power and the last decade of treating these types of projects that need to get done. Okay? Discount all that. Companies are not going to be able to even partially finance this shit because banks aren't going to want to finance this shit with a 10-foot pole due to their risk tolerances for probably a year or two, until rates hit this low enough, until global rates reach a point, until global central bank when the central banks put their rates back to zero or damn near close to zero, like we're already close, but when we get back to zero, once that stabilizes and bond prices are like way down and you can no longer really easily pocket that money creation spread of like, oh, I'm making 1-2% for doing nothing, just holding bonds. Once that's done, and that spreads very much lower, and you look at, the lending on this is like, oh, it'll be like a 3-5%, it'll be like 2% 2 to 3% premium, and you'll end up making more money on this as a bank than you would holding bonds. They'll swap back into that, and then bond prices will start to rise, and they'll swap back, and it's a whole cyclical cycle of bullshit. But so I would, although I do think the oil and gas pipeline like actually gets built no matter what. Like it needs to. Maybe I'm thinking too much logically, but the way Carney has acted thus far makes me believe so. So that'll be that. Until tomorrow, have a good day. I will be back with something. I have no idea yet. Goodbye.